everybody. Welcome to Lady Boss Mamas. I'm Molly Addis, and I have a clothing line and a business called Soul Ma for breastfeeding and postpartum moms. And I have two boys. Bennett is 8 and Andrew is 7.
And hi everyone, I'm Laura Katanen and I'm a sensory branding and marketing consultant, and I also have a lifestyle blog and co-host of this awesome show with Molly at Lady Boss Mamas. And we are just so excited today to be with Meagan.
Well, I am Meagan, and I am first and foremost mama to 3. So I have Evelyn, who is 6, Elena, who is 4, and Isaac, who is like just shy of his first birthday. And my business is Family Health Tips, which encompasses a couple of different things. I'm a lactation counselor, certified lactation counselor, and certified family and prenatal health coach, which basically in a nutshell means I help moms, I help educate them and equip them with the information, all evidence-based, that they need to make the best informed health decisions for their family. So really pregnancy through age 18 is how I help moms teach their kids about health, how to facilitate healthy living at home. I'm a big believer that there's no one size fits all. So, really just looking at what their family unit looks like and what realistically can they do, what can we strategize that can help them reach their breastfeeding goals or health goals. And then I'm also a blogger, so I love writing, and that took me by surprise within my business and was not a part of the original business model, but it has become one of my favorites. So I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of the business. And then randomly, kind of on the side, sometimes I handle social media. So
What are some of the health strategies that you would give to a family? Like, what do they need the most help with, would you say?
I think one of the biggest things is, first of all, how to even begin talking to kids about health. I think most adults struggle with it themselves. We're really well equipped with all the knowledge. We know we need to live healthier. We know we need to move more, but we are also really taxed for time as a society, and it's very difficult to, what does that look like for say a 2-income family where parents are both working 9-to-5s and, Susie and Johnny are in daycare, or, what does that look like? And so really what we do is I do a lot of time management, a lot of meal planning. How can we meal planning without meal planning though, because I'm not a fan of like spending 8 hours in the kitchen on Sunday, because you're not really saving any time that way, but really ways that we can work smarter to achieve the goal, and ways that we can lay the foundation for their kids. What does that verbiage look like in a way that the child understands? Children don't understand paleo or vegan, and really what do these kind of fad things, what do they teach our kids about nutrition in the long term? So it's really, I think the biggest pieces of it is education, honestly.
Mm-hmm. How did you get started in this?
Oh my gosh. Well, my background is a little funny. I started off, my real background is in fashion merchandising. And so between wholesaling and retailing and just industry changes, talk about trust, I started to see things crumble back in 2005. And I, in my gut, knew that things were not really going to rebound in my section of the business, which was wholesale at the time. And it really hasn't, not in the capacity or in the position that I was in. So, kind of just redirecting, well, what am I passionate about? And at the time, I was probably on the verge of a little bit of a breakdown, probably with all the industry stuff, and just riddled with anxiety, which is something that I have struggled with my entire life personally. And I've always just thought, I'm just an anxious person. That's just who I am. I'm high-strung. This is something that I deal with. And I never coped with it well. A lot of kind of just numbing and masking the symptoms. And I quit my job, which was a pretty good position there in 2008. And, this is not for me. I'm not doing this anymore. And I really overhauled my life. And so that's when I first got into my first entrepreneur venture, and I started a meal delivery service. And this was the height of 2005. No, 2008 rather. I keep saying 2005, but 2008. So, it's kind of like the economy is crumbling around you, and I'm like, I'm going to start a meal delivery service.
So what was the most vulnerable thing you went through when you quit your career and your corporate job and you had thrown yourself into this meal planning business? What was the toughest moment where you were like, man, do I trust my instincts or do I go the safe route?
The biggest moment, to answer your question, would be my mom suggesting that I do a round of meals and take them out and deliver them to people. And that first moment of like, holy cow, people are going to have to eat my food for this? Duh, but up until that point, it wasn't really a reality. And they loved it. So, I mean, it was a sweet chapter.
What's the moment that you had to trust yourself and afterwards you said, okay, I can trust myself?
It's a really gigantic, crazy moment that probably most people will never experience in their entire life. So as someone with anxiety, you have like this roundabout in your head of, ridiculous thoughts and anxious thoughts. And most of the time it's worst case scenario. And this is not business related or anything, but I would have been probably 17 or 18 years old, and my sister had what we believed was the flu. And so she was just down and out for like a week. And I was so very uncomfortable with her being sick that I couldn't even really go in her room. And every cell in my body was just uncomfortable with what was going on. And so I remember telling my mom, I really wish you would take her to the doctor. And old school family, if you're not bleeding and there's not an appendage, my mom's like, when you have the flu, everybody feels this way. She was just in bed and we're doing fluids and all of that. My sister was 12 at the time. And so finally, I really just became very just adamant with my mom, who was just very dismissive and had gotten to the point where really, I could not even head down the hallway. And I just, in my gut, knew that everything was not okay. So then I finally went to my mom and I said, I really just take her to the hospital, please. And she goes, well, I'll take her in the morning if she hasn't rebounded. And we're only talking about maybe 4 or 5 days. The average duration of a cold or the flus, you can really be out for a couple of weeks. And so I said, no, that's not enough. And I'm also a recovering people pleaser. So to stand up to my mom at this point is a big deal for me. And I said, that's not enough. Like 12 hours doesn't make a difference. If you take her now or you take her in the morning. And when they got to the ER, she was in complete renal failure. She had toxic shock syndrome. And so what followed was scary. We almost lost her. And 12 hours would have meant her life. And that was really pivotal for me in the point that I do have a good intuition and I'm not just, crazy ruminating thoughts in my head. And from that point, I've taken that gut feeling very seriously. And it's helped me quite a bit in my life.
So how long did it take for you to really follow your intuition and trust that inner voice? You were 17, so I could imagine that you still battled with it for some time, maybe.
Absolutely.
Or, so how can we do that, you think? And what was your tactic in overcoming that?
I think the biggest thing for me is when I start having those thoughts is I do immediately go to worst case scenario. What is worst case scenario? And once I figure out what that looks like and I come up with, what I would do, if it doesn't so if it's typical anxiety, then that will typically, kind of table those feelings and those thoughts. I've already figured it out and I'm going to take a deep breath and move forward. And if it still just keeps coming back and is nagging, and if I'm definitely still thinking about it in the morning, like my hair, case in point, I had walked out 2 months ago and I didn't do it. And I thought about it over and over again. That's what I'm going to do. And so if it's something that still is just nagging at me, even past that, you figure out what you're going to do worst case scenario, then it's probably something that you really need to pay attention to and follow through.
I want to move over to a different topic that's been on my mind a lot lately. I just have a friend who had a baby and she is still struggling emotionally with the fact that she's just not able to work out the breastfeeding dance with her little one. And so as a lactation consultant, I'm sure that you're dealing with this a lot. And we put so much pressure on ourselves as women. But in the end, it has to do with trust again, like trusting yourself and knowing what is right for you and your little one. And that is not every single time going to be the same thing as everybody else, but it's so hard, right? What techniques, what tips, advice do you have for women to stop putting so much pressure on themselves with breastfeeding? You know, it's this balance of, yes, there's this health benefit and doctors say and all of this stuff that adds to this pressure, which I can appreciate, but at the same time, enough is enough. Like, let's be real, not every woman has the ability, or maybe the child just the body doesn't function with the breast milk. So how do you work through this?
I do first and foremost talk about that, yes, there are instances where it just doesn't work out. There are a lot of things that happen in the first 24 hours post-birth. Baby-friendly hospitals are starting to crop up more and more, but a lot of women, number one, are set up or not set up for success. And I think putting that out there we feel responsible, right? We carry these babies and this is what we're supposed to do. And outside of societal pressures, this is how my body is supposed to function. And we see that a lot with women that struggle with infertility. And there's that shame that my body is not functioning the way it's supposed to. And so first and foremost is to say, you probably, may not have been set up for success. So that sort of takes that blame, if you will, away from mom, which kind of gives her a little bit of breathing room. And I always start off with, what are mom's goals? And it doesn't have to sound pretty, but what are your goals? And for some women, it's, to nurse up until 6 weeks and then they want to go back to work, or maybe it's exclusively pumping. And I always offer a get out of jail free card. And that is a pass to say that it's okay to stop. I have probably helped, actually my last 4 or 5 clients have been straight weaning clients. Unfortunately, moms don't get to me early enough. And many times, by the time moms do make it to actually calling me, they have dealt with, bless their hearts, some of them the worst of the worst, mastitis, constant clogged ducts. And it's not a quality of life. And I'm passionate about breastfeeding, but you have to be able to live and you have to be able to enjoy. And if a mom is so over it by the point that she gets to me, I think, just hearing the fact that it's okay to stop and it's okay to be done. And I think just hearing that, even if they wanted to stop, oftentimes that's enough to say, okay, well, I can choose to try a little bit longer, but it lets them know that it doesn't have to be that way. And then I have my spiel. There have been some, serious studies over the recent years where we look at mom's happiness. Mom's happiness is more important to a child's well-being and overall adjustment than whether or not she's college educated, whether or not she works in or out of the home, how many hours the child spent in daycare. If mom is struggling and mom's not happy, that's a problem, breastfeeding or not. And I think that that's important for moms to hear, because we have this, we've been raised with this rhetoric that, well, you had a baby and it's not about you anymore. And I have a problem with that. And what is that? I have a baby and I just cease to exist, or my feelings. And then, you look at the research recently that it is so very important to our kids that we be happy, that we take care of ourselves, and we're really only good to them in that regard. So I think kind of opening up with that does help to find out really what is most important to mom and how can I support that mom.
It resonates with all us, and the reason that Molly and I started this, because I was deep. I was really somewhat depressed, I would say, when I first had Aiden. And I did breastfeed, and I was fortunate enough to do that for a year. But with a startup, I was doing it I was pumping in the most awkward places. I was super stressed. I was completely out of my mind, frazzled. And I was just how do I do this? How can I keep doing this? And it was a blessing that Molly came into my life. And, you know, I was saying to her how I was struggling, and I know more women probably struggle with this. We can't let other women feel alone anymore. And that was like it. She was like, I agree. And we were like, let's do this Lady Boss Mama thing.
Thank you for the service you do and for all the help you give to moms. So important.
Thank you very much. Yes, you guys too. I mean, these are great. I look forward to seeing, you know, who's going to be on the interview in the week. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do as women and as moms is to protect each other and to lift each other up. And geez, if we can't learn from each other's lessons, then you know, what are we doing? Just making it harder on ourselves.
Thank you everybody for watching. We do this every week. Stay tuned for Meagan's feature, and stay tuned for more information on our Lady Boss Mama retreat in October. Thanks everyone.